Welcome into another episode of So Rare in the States. My name is Chris, MLS Card Guy. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Nashi. How are you today, Nashi?
Doing good, mate. Good. Glad to be with the boys today. Beautiful Sunday.
It should be a great week to talk about, and we have a special guest on this week. A big Charlotte fan, runs the Charlotte podcast as well, the Charlotte Shocker Show. Please welcome Trippin B. How are you today, Trippin?
Hey, what's up, Chris and Chris? Thank you very much for having me. Absolutely honored to be here. Love to listen to the show, and can't wait to listen back to this one in all my vanity, and give you guys the best episode you've ever had.
Love that. And I heard some trash talk before as well, that you are the biggest Charlotte collector on the platform as well. So some people will definitely be interested to know that. As you can see, potentially you could see, we are actually going to try this on video. So we're going to try to put this on YouTube so that you guys can also get to see a little bit of us as we do the show as well. So if you are watching, or if you are listening on Spotify or Apple, definitely go and check out the YouTube version as well for a little bit more content. But we are going to hop straight into things for today. So there were a bunch of games that went on yesterday. They were all kind of at the same time, so I really only got to watch like one or two. But what did you get to see there, Nashi? Start with you.
I mean, yeah, I was kind of in the same boat. I started out with obviously Chicago away at Toronto, and I was actually pretty hopeful that we could get a result from that game. You know, like Toronto shown signs of doing well, but they're not quite consistent. It was the first time Chicago started with Caspar, Jairo, Mueller, and Shaqiri as the front four, and they've really struggled creatively this year. So I was hopeful, and it was kind of, at the end of it, I end up feeling a bit bittersweet because they did create a lot of chances. They kind of dominated the game, but it just, at the end of the day, they've come out losing the game somehow. It's kind of a story of Chicago's season. There's been these signs of promise, these, just when you get a bit excited, they went 1-0 down early, turned it around, 2-1 up. I thought, here we go. This is the sort of turning point in the season. They're going to kick on now. And then within a space of about 10 minutes, Pozuelo gets a very soft penalty, but he gets a penalty and then scores an absolute worldie. And we lose the game. I'm kind of, like I said, it's bittersweet because the performance was good. If you look at the stat lines here, Chicago, 33 shots, 9 on target, 63% possession away from home. But they lose to a team with 5 shots, 4 on target, 37%. And that's kind of, like you said, I don't know where kind of that falls, because it's one of the two things. It's either we just don't have the players to put the ball in the back of the net, and it doesn't matter how much creativity Shaqiri is delivering and these new guys. Casper really hasn't got going. But I mean, there's still some optimism there. We've lost the game, but we really need to start getting some results soon in Chicago. Yeah, I know you watched that too, Trippin. Did you have any takeaways there?
33 shots, absolutely absurd. To only come away with 2 goals after 33 shots. Yeah, I'm looking at the box score, shows 13 of those shots were blocked. So that's 20 that flew towards the frame. Not all of them were on target. 9 on target, though. Even 9 on target is kind of absurd on a slightly not quite the same level as 33. I'm shocked. Toronto is one of my teams that I think is a peg for one of the worst teams in the league. When I look at what they've got on paper, I know people have been waiting for Insigne to come. I know Jose Jimenez has shown some bright spots. I know Bradley's been a producer for SO5 from a So Rare perspective. He's got his little cult of fanboys out there, Michael Bradley. But those people are in for a rude awakening eventually. I think Toronto's still headed down, but I'm surprised. I was merely the home field advantage. I think it's that vaunted MLS home field advantage that kind of turned against Chicago for that 10-minute stretch, like you mentioned. Pozuelo's penalty was pretty soft. His goal was amazing. It was just a banger curler that he lined up and put in the top right corner.
Yeah. Tough loss. Another thing, piggybacking off last week's episode where we talked about Gaga, don't like to say it, but I think he could have done better for the first goal. If you remember, it was kind of a very soft wrist down to the right. I think he's got to be saving that. And like them kind of moments, like especially to play Chicago in now where they just can't get a result. Performances don't, win your championships. You've got to get a ball in the back of the net. You've got to get results. And like, it's just not quite happening there. I'm starting to get worried. Like I said, in the midst of some positive signs, I am worried. And yeah, Toronto didn't really, on the flip side, were pretty poor, like you said. I do have Insigne, and I'm kind of hoping that he can be a catalyst. I know they've spoke about, Bob Bradley spoke about bringing some new players in too. He's kind of been open with that. So maybe they have enough there. They do have some young talent in and around them. So maybe they're a team for next year to kind of project ahead. I'm not sure, but do you have any thoughts, Chris, on Toronto, Chicago?
Yeah, they've got young talent, but it's just not producing. Like Marshall Ruddy's been hurt, Schaffelberg's been hurt. Judd Nelson's been good, but like Priso has been horrible. I thought Priso was going to be pretty good this year, and he's just been terrible. But yeah, I mean they've got pieces. They've got and you didn't even mention Osorio, who's Canadian national team player. He goes out in the 20th minute, which I think really hurt them. I had actually written for Predictology a little bit earlier that getting Osorio back, potentially getting Pozuelo back, which they did, they should score a few goals, which they ended up doing. But you know, from the Toronto perspective of things, they do need Insigne. They do need just more in the back line. Like Salcedo has been, for being a DP center back, just not good. He's been sent off twice, and the back line just looks you know, shredded to pieces at times. And then they go and change the goalkeeper. And I know that that's a big deal from a Sora perspective. Is this something that we think is going to be kind of a long-term thing, or is this, you know, just rotating Bono before the international break? What do you think about that, Trippin?
I mean, guys, I'm not going to lie. I've been sitting here staring at Quentin Westberg's So Rare page since this game ended, basically. Meanwhile, flipping over to the other tab and refreshing Twitter to see if Bob Bradley is giving me any type of lean with a post-game comment. You know, Westy did good. He's our guy. Here's what I do know. Toronto FC did post a video of him going over to salute the fans right after the game. That was on their official account. He started the cup match in the Canadian Cup earlier this week, which was a win. He did have one semi-mistake. Didn't count as a big error, I don't believe, for Opta, but he wasn't great, but they won the match. So now he's won 2 in a row. Everybody knows Bono's bad. If you do a search for Westberg Bradley on Twitter, you're going to see like every Toronto fan saying, put Q in, come on, Bob, do the right thing, all this kind of stuff. So I've got all these tea leaves pointing to Westberg as potentially keeping the starting job. And there's all these cheap cards on the market under 0.2, you know, ranging from 0.13 to 0.199 and a bunch in between. And when you look at the current SORA market for goalkeepers, where any starter is trending above 0.4, if Westbrook's going to keep the job right now, he's a huge bargain. And I've had to like wrestle with myself. Do I buy this guy? Yes or no? There was one just recently, it looks like that was pointed for 0.105 that when we started the show that is already sold 10 minutes later. So it's a big question coming out of this game. It doesn't have to be the most important question for you or your gallery, I guess. The guy does kind of suck. But I'm just, when you in this kind of, when I'm looking at I'm looking at this on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, and I'm thinking about increasing my goalkeeper depth as we get closer and closer to the getting commons out of Global All-Star. So I feel like rare goalkeeper prices are going to continue to trend up. If you can get a starter for under 2, maybe you should. I don't know. It's not financial advice. I haven't pulled the trigger on this guy yet myself, but it's out there.
My question would be there on Westberg is like, do you think he's good enough to be a starter elsewhere if he does end up coming on the bench like next season? A bit of a Tyler Miller. You kind of have that situation with Tyler Miller where he's quite well known that he's like good enough, even if he doesn't get a job this year, that he should have a decent shot or like at least a reasonable shot of being starting somewhere else. Whereas Westberg, I'm not sure. How do you sort of evaluate that? Like if he doesn't get the job at Toronto, is there still some hope?
There's no hope, I don't think. No, I think this is his last shot for sure. He's not good, but we're just talking about getting a starter to get you into contests and regions and things like that. And I do think Toronto will trend up when Insigne gets there, as some of the young talent that you guys mentioned starts to come together a little bit. I would say Toronto is going to do better in the next 15 games than they did in the first 15 games. That may not be saying much, but that's where I'm at with it. Just something to think about if people are looking for cheap goalkeepers. It's always a question.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here and tell you why you shouldn't go and get Westberg. So we just talked about Bob Bradley wanting to bring in new players. And the obvious position that you would want to bring in is goalkeeper for me, because Bono is, like you said, horrible. Westberg is old and really not that good himself, and they don't have a third guy that they don't have a young like Celentano type guy, Rocco Rios Novo, that you're like, okay, this is the heir apparent. Eventually, this guy's going to be the guy. He just needs to develop. There's nobody like that in Toronto. They're going to need to bring in somebody at some point. So they don't have an heir apparent that is really going to come in and take the job once he's ready, once he's done developing. It's just him, right? It's just the two of them that are kind of competing for this job. So it makes a lot of sense to me that they bring in an outside goalkeeper, especially if Bradley's tested Bono and he's figured out that he's not the guy, which it seems like he probably has. So I stay away from this situation at all costs if I can. And there's other guys that are not 0.4 that are starters, like Shuttleworth, I think is like 0.2. And he is going to be, at least for me, he's going to be the starter. Now, Rocco Rios Novo potentially is there. He's on the bench, so maybe, but I think it's a little bit of wishful thinking. I mean, he wasn't particularly great in the USL last year, so to think that he can take a step up like that in 1 year is ambitious, but hey, who knows? Maybe.
I think with Shuttleworth, like I picked one up for the same reasons. His price is kind of the same as Trippin saying there. Even for the one season, around 0.2, you've got some decent value there. If you even with a threshold, you maybe pick up a card or two. You got a starting goalkeeper for just a year. But even with someone like him, there's that weird thing where like he's been a starter in the MLS before, maybe at the top clubs. If he goes on and does really well this season with Atlanta, which isn't, they're terrible defensively. We can get into that maybe later. But if he goes on for the rest of the season, he just got back into the team. So if he finds some form and kind of puts the team on his back, someone like that maybe does have some upside, because then you get him for 0.2 for this year. And then maybe if he has a good season, he goes on and finds a move to maybe someone who's needing a fill-in for a year or two. And I thought that was my logic when I picked him up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's not bad, and you're pretty well guaranteed to get him for a season, whereas Westberg, you have no real clue. You're just taking a shot in the dark. I mean, it's I mean, there's other guys like Ella Khan out there too, right? Celentano was garbage last night. So the people that really thought he was going to take the starting job, I like him long term. You just very rarely see anybody come out of the draft ready to play year one, much less a goalkeeper. So I think long term he is probably going to be the successor to Khan, but right now it's Khan's job, and Khan I think is 0.25 maybe. So yeah, I mean, I think there's other kind of bottom of the barrel type goalkeepers that aren't nearly as risky as Westberg, but I mean, it's possible. I mean, Westberg could be the starter the rest of the year. If he's the starter the rest of the year, he's worth more than 0.1, period, end of story. So, I mean, it's maybe worth a shot, but I think there's just maybe other options out there that you could also try to consider.
Goalkeepers are just such a headache, aren't they? You lose sleep over them. I picked up this is not MLS, but it's America. I picked up a goalkeeper, Lucas Chavez, from the Argentinian league, because I saw that he was their starter for years. He's like their second most valuable player on that transfer market, and he's coming back from injury. And I picked him up for Argentinos. And I just saw today that, and there was another guy playing, Lanzalotta. I just saw today that now he's being linked to, again, a loan out because the backup did really well. So now they kind of got two good keepers, but he's too good. So now I just impulse bought. Once I saw that news, I impulse bought the Lanzalotta too, just so now I've got like the hedge, like sometimes that's the way you got to go. You got to go with your gut. So
you're either going to end up with two goalkeepers or none in that, situation, probably one way or the other.
All or nothing, gamble, baby. Let's go. All right, so Chris, did you watch any games?
I was going to say that was a really long-winded thing on Chicago and Toronto. So we got a lot of games that we went through too. So we'll try to speed it up. The Quakes LAFC game, that was an interesting one. I know Trippin also watched this one. I watched maybe the first half. And it was just kind of wide open, which is what you expect from San Jose games. I have not actually watched San Jose since Matias Almeida left. It did look a little bit more controlled, I guess, defensively than it has in the past. They just don't have maybe the players in the back. They don't have the talent in the back. And Calvo is probably the most talented, and he is kind of garbage too. So going forward, though, Jamiro Montero, oh my gosh, he was so influential in this game. And I don't think a lot of people have really watched him because, I mean, maybe last year in Philadelphia, but he is phenomenal. I don't know how Philadelphia got rid of him and they're still this good. What were your thoughts on this game, Trip?
Jamiro was great. Espinosa was pulling strings. Abobasi was all over the place. People have been kind of like selling Abobasi continually as his value keeps going up and up and up. People keep jumping ship, and he keeps delivering the results. So it's kind of funny. He had 2 goals here. Second one was an absolute farce defending by LAFC in the box off a corner. Ball bounced to him, and it's like a training ground exercise. There's literally no one around him. The LAFC, their first 2 goals were a penalty that was probably deserved, maybe a little soft, and then a nice goal from Hollingshead, but he kind of had Marcinkowski screened there. It was a nice shot, but it could have been saved, I think, if the goalkeeper had a little bit better view. San Jose, Marcinkowski's one of I own his card. He's one of my favorite keepers. He ended up with like between 15 and 20 AA this game. He racks up the AA, but he always continually gets let down by his defense, and so he's always a threat to give up 3, unfortunately, which he did here. Brian Rodriguez was nice in Vela's absence. Kellen Acosta continued to not deliver. There was just a lot of action. It was a great game. 3 goals in the first 20 minutes, 4 goals total in the first half. It was fun. A lot of good things. I think the biggest takeaway is that if you still own Carlos Vela, it's time to get rid of him at this point. Every game, every time he does appear for LAFC, it's his threat to be his last time ever for them, I think. He subbed himself out 20 minutes into the cup game at midweek, and basically he's probably in some mood where he doesn't feel like playing. I think it's time to jump ship on him. And I've been telling people that on Abobasi, though, also, and he keeps going up. So who knows? Maybe I'm wrong.
There's some questions.
Hold on 1 second. The thought with Abobasi, though, oh my God, did he miss some sitters? Like, he should have had 4 or 5 in the first half.
Yes, true. 100%.
So, I mean, yes, he's scoring, but goodness gracious, like anybody could score some of those goals. Sorry, go ahead, Nashi.
He's getting the chances, though, to be fair. It's like like you got to get into the right positions to get the chances, and then, you're going to miss some. But he's just, if my striker's getting that many chances, I'm happy, regardless whether he's scoring them. Because over the course of the season, if he's still getting in them positions, like you said, anyone could score them. You'd back him to start putting them away. I wanted to dial in on a few. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Oh, one headline I did want to throw out, that if Vela is going to keep missing time, keep an eye. Latif Blessing turned out an amazing score. 75 for his midfielder card, 63 for his forward card. And he was basically in the cam role. He's basically playing a number 10 with Vela out. He's a very versatile player that plays all over the pitch. And if he's going to stay in that role, he's going to continue to get those chances created and those box entries. And he even got a triple-double in this match, which that's why his midfielder score was a little bit higher. But forwards don't get some of those counting stats going up, but they do get the bonus. So that's why his forward card still scored well. And just someone to keep an eye on if Vela is going to miss extended time. He's pretty cheap. I own him. I way overpaid for him last year, and I've just kind of held on to him this time. And he's finally might be in a good spot where he might be delivering his best results.
Yeah, you'd think the Matrix well, because he's a very active kind of player, isn't he? He's like busy, he's getting around, he's getting involved. So like that's
he's everywhere.
In so rare, that's the thing. Did you have something to add, Chris?
Yeah, I actually just picked him up this week because I needed a forward card, and his forward card is way underpriced compared to every other forward card in the market right now. And the reason is he doesn't start every game. The I guess drawback or downside, when everyone's healthy, he's not probably a starter, even though he's a fantastic player and I think he should be a starter. The plus side is he can play just about every position on the field. So if anybody on the team gets hurt, he's the next one in. So I actually don't mind him for like a threshold team where if he subs on and picks up a 10 AA, you're still okay. I don't think he's going to rack up goals or assists or anything like that and get real high, but for a threshold team, I actually think he's not bad.
40 AA as a midfielder, 33 as a forward this weekend. If Vela's out, Blessing benefits the most right now.
That's incredible, yeah. With I was going to ask you, Tripper, and you said you have Markanowski, a player who stood out for me so rare-wise, but I've never seen much of him in real life, is Nathan. I don't know if you've seen his scores on So Rare.
Mm-hmm.
They are unbelievable. Oh, yeah. And when you guys were just saying maybe Calvo is their best defender, like, why is he pumping out them kind of scores? Is he that good and dominant? I haven't seen him play much. I didn't know if you had, because you probably considered him.
No, Nathan's one of those guys that last year everyone was waiting for him to get minted, because you could look at him on Sora data and see all these amazing scores he was turning, but there was no cards available. There's still only 8 rare Nathan cards, no super rares available on the site, only 56 limited. And the funny thing is, though, is he hasn't really delivered. I believe his rare is a 1 ETH card right now, if I look at it. Yeah, the cheapest floor price on the market is 1 ETH. His most recent sale is 0.811. That was an auction, but he is not delivering because he's got an own goal, he's got a red card, and he had a big error lead to goal on this one. And he's having these errors that are going to start to bring his price down, I believe. Eventually they have to. But if you look at his scores last year, he's like super elite, maybe the best SO5 defender in MLS. He's got a 60 L40, which is insane. His L40 AA is 23 points. So he's got the history. He's just had some recent bad results.
Yeah,
here's one thing with him too is, does the switch away from Matias Almeida in that system where you're just, it's almost like the Red Bulls where you're just always constantly playing, like every player on the field is constantly running somewhere and constantly making a play. Does that switch away hurt his AA scores? Because he's probably not racking up nearly as many AA scores recently. I don't know. I haven't looked at him.
Well, here versus LAFC just this Saturday, gave up 3 goals. That's what, -6, I think. Had a negative decisive, so we had 15 decisive. Had 43 AA points for a total score of 58. Jeez. With a negative decisive. He's giving you a 60 point. So he's definitely worth the investment. He's just expensive as hell because people waited forever. No one got to sneak up on him, or he didn't like sneak up on anybody because people have been waiting for him for almost a year.
Yeah, I had the same problem with Talis Magno. I would have loved to get him right when he transferred, but by the time he actually got here and played a full 2 years before he was minted, I couldn't get him at that point. Let's keep rolling through here. So I watched, as painful as it is to say, I watched DC against the New York Red Bulls, and I mean, it was a fairly even game in the first half. Really, nothing happened. It was 0-0 with like no shots. Both teams were kind of poor. New York was probably a little better. They were at least getting towards the attacking third. DC just looks absolutely listless, like no taxi phone test, and they have no playmaking whatsoever. Everybody knows to key on Gressel now, so nobody lets him get free, and with no taxi, there's no other options. And I mean, they need help in the midfield. I mean, Sophie Jafalne, I think his name is, he's trying his best, man. Like he's really trying. He's running around. Same thing with like Skundrich last year. They put him in the midfield, and they're giving a lot of effort. They just don't have quality. Like he was a 2nd round pick in the draft this year, and they've thrown him straight into the midfield and just put him in a bad spot. And you can see like flashes, but he just doesn't have the technical ability. They need somebody to get on the ball in the midfield, because Knaus is a good destroyer, but he doesn't hold the ball up. So they desperately need somebody to just get on a little bit of possession, and then going forward, they have to have Taxi. If Taxi doesn't play, there's just no way that they're doing anything well. But in the game itself, I mean, Gressel rounds the keeper on a 1-on-1 and hits side netting. It could have been 1-0 right there, and then it could just be old school DC where you just pack it in and just set up shop and park the bus and go for the 1-0, or even if you concede 1-1 draw. But instead, don't get that one. Red Bull score 3 worldy goals, and that's that. So yeah, I mean, it was frustrating for sure. Also, Aaron Long got pulled off at halftime. Some of you guys might be wondering about that. It wasn't performance-based. It wasn't injury-related. It was just they thought he was playing too many minutes, which is fair, but now he's been called up to the U.S. national team. So, yeah, good luck with not playing any minutes there.
The problem with like problem with, like you said, the lack of creativity and like losing Taxi, and in the MLS specifically, it almost feels like the strategy that kind of only Nashville sometimes do it, where you kind of defend it out, try and nick a 1-0, is just not optimal for the MLS, just because we've talked about before, where like the best players in the league are generally attacking players. So you want to play into them. So I feel like in the MLS, more than any other league, if you haven't got them creative sparks, if you can't score goals, you're really struggling, because the teams that struggle to score goals in Europe might be able to do the Jose Mourinho, be so astute defensively, have such great defenders that they could. But in the MLS, you just don't see the quality of player in the defensive third. So that strategy, you know, you're just really looking like without goals in your team, it's just really tough. And I relate to you from watching Chicago, especially earlier in the season before they sort of brought in a couple pieces. You're just thinking they ain't going to keep. They're doing everything they can to keep clean sheets, but as soon as they start conceding, they just can't score. You know, and you just think, where do you kind of go from here? Like,
and that's what DC was under Ben Olsen, and that's what we all had a problem with. And then they brought in this new coach to bring in this up-tempo, high-press attack that was at least going to score goals, and it did score goals. And now, it just wasn't good enough against Red Bulls. Just not very good. They need some help in the summer transfer window. I don't know who they're bringing in or where they're getting them from, but man, I hope that they get some decent pieces. And also, they've got a lot of injuries too. They've got Nyman out still. He's had another really disappointing season. So yeah, hopefully he can kind of turn things around. Any other thoughts on DC or Red Bulls there, Trippin?
Yeah, Nyman, thankfully I sold his card at the beginning of the year. He should have been in that Jafal role if he wasn't hurt all the time. He's maybe a promising player whose promise is kind of starting to fade away. Red Bulls are good. Buy him. Lewis Morgan, if you can get him for a deal, buy him. Lucchinius, also real nice. I'm a huge Charlotte fan, which we'll get into a little later, but I got firsthand look at these Red Bulls team in the Cup midweek. We play them again at home, so I'm going to be seeing Red Bulls in person in about 10 days, and not looking forward to it. They are mean, ugly, pressing, and they use tactics that go with the press in terms of throwing themselves on the ground, and then they come up with these wonder goals that just piss you right off. So
good news is they really can't
that's
score.
all I have to say about Red Bulls.
Other than the wonder goals, they really can't score. So I mean,
right, exactly.
At least there's that. Yeah, let's get to the next one here. So we got Orlando against Dallas, which was a fun game. Dallas puts the pedal to the metal in the second half. My goodness, Paul Arriola scored a nice goal. I saw. I actually didn't watch this game too much of it. I watched maybe 10 minutes. What did you see in this one, Trippin?
Well, I was watching this one pretty close because I recently invested in Mauricio Pereira Super Rare. I basically, in the last 3 weeks, month or so, not great timing since ETH crashed, like right after I made the big decision to do this, but I decided to reinvest in So Rare. I've really liked my results over the last first year that I've been on it. So I decided to reinvest a little more, buy a few super rares to help me compete in Division 3. And one of those is Reynoso, one of those is Jefferson Savarino, and one is Mauricio Pereira for Orlando. Love that he's always on the ball, racking up AA. I think he's just in a good spot. And I like Orlando, what they do around him. So I was really happy to see him get an assist in first half stoppage time off a free kick. Great kick in, service into Kara. Chang Kara finishes it. Orlando goes in with the lead and posts the graphic. And then their 1-0 halftime lead graphic ended up being posted on the parody meme account on Twitter that's MLS images that preceded unfortunate events because, like you mentioned, Chris, they got absolutely blitzed in the second half by Dallas. Dallas is crazy. Dallas, another Charlotte reference is that we were linked to Paul Arriola, bringing him in from DC in the offseason right before the season started. Didn't happen. He ended up choosing Dallas. I have a feeling that he did not want to really be part of a expansion project. He wanted to go somewhere that had some players that were ready to win now. And him and Jesus Ferreira just look amazing running up and into the attack. And they're so good. They even make old man Franco Haro look good, who subbed in. Paxton always injured. Palmacow got injured again. Poor kid just can't seem to stay on the pitch.
He's had a good year this year, though.
He has, but the last
He's
couple
been
games
really
he's
good.
reverted back to his bad form. He had a hot streak
Yeah.
for sure, but
Yeah.
keep an eye on him. If you have him, I would sell him. I would sell his card if you had it for sure. But
I think I watched about half hour of that game, and I thought Savannah was brilliant. Like, just as a player, I mean, I haven't even checked his Serie A scores, and we've talked about him a bit with a few guests on the shows, but he stood out to me. Like, he's very composed, very physically dominant, and just really technical on the ball. So yeah, I think Ariola was a brilliant piece of business, brilliant, and probably World Cup year. I guess we'll get into that too. Yeah, going to Charlotte maybe is a bit too much of an unknown. But it seems like it was a good decision for him and a brilliant piece of business by Dallas. And we talked about it. They're such a dangerous side. Like that game summed it up. You know, you thought they're looking 1-0 down away from home, or you know what I mean, they're looking up against it, and then just bang, they just turn it on and blow them away. It was kind of a story of their season.
they stuck Pedro Gallese in the guillotine right at the. It sucks. You hate to see. Whenever I'm watching a slate of MLS, that's I watch the other leagues in Europe and whatnot, but I'm most locked into MLS, the slate from starting to finish, and I'm just seeing who's getting the guillotine, which keepers are getting that -20. It's brutal, but Pedro got it for sure.
Yeah, and Dallas is actually up into second, which is pretty crazy. I kind of thought of them as more of a hot and cold team. Like, on their day, they're unplayable. If they're hot, they're just gonna win. But they also have these games where it just doesn't work out, and it was almost like both games they played in the first half and then in the second half of this one.
They lost at home to Vancouver, so that's an example of the hot cold right there.
It's wild, and Vancouver's coming too. Vancouver beat Kansas City off the bottom of the table. Good for them. Kansas City is now on the bottom. And look at that. Seattle is 13th in the Western Conference. Even after winning Champions League, they still have not really picked it up too much at all.
They have a good matchup in their next game.
Yeah, they play today. A little bit later on, as we're recording, they play against Charlotte. So we are going to go ahead and get into we have a couple main topics here. Oh, one last thing before we move on. We see the Champions League final, and obviously this is an American, soccer podcast, but you're not going to not talk about the Champions League final. What a performance by Thibaut Courtois. My goodness, that man was everywhere, all over the place, just making save after save after save on Liverpool. And I mean, apparently the Ballon d'Or is a little bit earlier this year, and it's the World Cup is after that. But if Belgium win the World Cup this year, what kind of a year did Thibaut Courtois have? I mean, has there ever been a goalkeeper be better than single-handedly winning the Champions League final practically, and then going on and winning the World Cup with Belgium potentially?
It's funny. Do you think there's going to be a side effect of so rare where reverence for goalkeepers in the mainstream becomes more? Because usually this is really rare. That Courtois was unbelievable, by the way, and he's the best keeper in the world. But you're seeing the media talk about him and stuff. Already on so rare, any goalkeeper performing well, we're already dialed in on it. We have love for them. They're like God. So it's kind of funny to see how that translates. Yeah, it was an unbelievable game. I think Liverpool will be really disappointed because they were the better team, but it was kind of Madrid were kind of still comfortable. They didn't get the game into the space where I think Liverpool needed to. They had to make it wild. They had to make it moving. They had to get Madrid out of their comfort zone. Ancelotti's so savvy. Their team's so savvy. They got old experienced players in there. Modric, Casemiro, Kroos, Benzema. They know how to manage the game, whether they got the ball or not got the ball. They haven't got the ego. There was times in the game where they could have tried to make more forward passes, and they just slowed it down. And watching it as a football fan, you just knew that's so smart what they're doing right now. So although people talking after Liverpool had more chances, they're a better team, I don't think that Madrid were uncomfortable for much of the game, and I think Liverpool really will regret not making them that way. They should have, I think they need to make the game more chaotic because Madrid's too experienced to have a team there. So yeah, it was a good watch. It was a good game. I was very surprised at the result. I thought Liverpool were going to take it down. You get to watch that, Tribune?
Yeah, I actually had one more thought on the Champions League there, and you hit the nail on the head when you said Madrid played exactly the game that they wanted to play, and I said that on Twitter, and I got a little bit of flack for it. Um, and to me, Madrid was the better team in this game. Now, say what you will, you can make all kinds of excuses for Liverpool because of the schedule. I mean, the schedule is brutal for Liverpool. They had to play every single game mattered. They didn't get to rest their starters. Real Madrid had wrapped up the La Liga title months ago. So there is that element to where if it were actually an even game, Liverpool is probably more talented and they probably win the game. However, if Carlo Ancelotti had drawn up pregame exactly how he wanted this game to go, this is what he would have drawn up. Exactly how it played out. Real Madrid in complete control from my. They didn't have the ball, but they were in complete control the entire game. And even the Benzema goal, I thought was, and a lot of people have said that they thought that was a legitimate goal that got ruled out just before halftime. Even if it wasn't technically by the rule legitimate, it should be legitimate. I mean, there's two defenders sandwich the ball to the attacker. There's no way that should be offside.
Yeah, when you talk about control too, I don't think you mean like they're dominating the game in terms of from like a third party standpoint. But even when they were under pressure, under the cosh, that's where like the world class experience comes in because they didn't panic, they didn't. And then when they scored that goal against the run of play, the Benzema disallowed goal, the whole mentality of Liverpool, it seemed like they shifted a little bit. And Real Madrid, even when they were kind of having moments of adversity, you felt like they were still stable. And that is just experience. You've got Modric and Kroos. Modric, for me, is one of my favourite players ever. I think one of the best, still most underrated players ever. Like, I watched him at Tottenham and he just tore up West Ham. I used to have a season ticket when he was there, and I've never seen. It's really hard in the Premier League too. Like you get the Carlos Hills here to bring it back to the MLS, who stand out and dominate a game and kind of look like they're playing like a level down in age group. But when you get to the Premier League, like that's really a metric where it's so hard to do that, no matter how good you are, because every player is world class. And Luka Modric used to just completely run the game. Like the whole game is being dictated by one player. And yeah, just a little nuance there. Like, yeah, brilliant player. And I think him and Kroos kept ahead and won the game. But yeah, that's enough. Enough European football. We're getting dizzy over here, tripping. I'm getting worried.
Hey,
get back to Charlotte.
Mane's shot could have changed everything. That's all. That's the one thing I remember. That fingertip from Tebow to put it on the post was amazing.
He made two or three saves like that I was just like, are you serious? Are you kidding me? Yeah, crazy game. Great. Congratulations to Real Madrid. But we are moving on. We have two more topics. I'll let you guys select which one do you want to do first. Do we want to do the whole nation, the national team, or do we want to go Charlotte first?
Let's go national team now, because I had some questions about this. Obviously, you got the camp coming up, and it's a big year. I mean, obviously, it's a big year for every team because it's the World Cup, but for me, it feels even bigger for the US because it's the first year where you actually look at their team and some of their players and think they could get some results here that might send some shockwaves around. I think there is a general optimism. The feeling around soccer in this country is growing. You got Joe Rogan tweeting about soccer now. It's going to be the biggest sport in 10 years. I think there's something building here. And so now, like for me coming in, I'm looking at their new squad, and you've got some pieces, obviously, that we all know, the big names. And do you think there's any of these new guys coming in now that can add to your chances, that can develop over the course between now and then to make a difference? If I pick out a couple names here out of the squad they just made, the one that was really kind of exciting for me, even though I'm not American, but Malik Tillman coming in. I think this World Cup might come too soon for him, but his pedigree coming through at Bayern Munich, does that get you excited for the future? Because that's kind of what you're missing, is maybe like that number 9, someone getting goals in the final third.
Yeah, so I mean, Malik Tillman is obviously a great prospect coming through Bayern Munich, and this is where you see the evolution of the U.S. national team and the difference in where we are now as compared to where we were 4 or even 8 years ago. Malik Tillman comes through Bayern Munich's academy and is just now getting called up before, and he's kind of on the verge of getting Bayern Munich minutes as well. But he really honestly has to break into the Bayern Munich team in order to honestly get a chance in this U.S. national team. Whereas a few years ago, 8 years ago, Julian Green comes through and is basically just an academy player and gets put on the full World Cup team and actually played quite a bit in Brazil as well. So this is really, and I can't remember which academy he came through, Julian Green, but it was one of the bigger ones, but it wasn't Bayern Munich. So this is really where you're seeing the development and the depth in the U.S. pool now. Is that a guy like Malik Tillman is not just an automatic starter because he's kind of on the bench ish for Bayern Munich. So I think obviously he's a great player, great talent. Excited to get him, just like I was excited to get Yunus Musa, who is another big dual national who's really developed into a really, really good player.
Trippin, do you have any thoughts on the Brendan Aronson coming to the Premier League? What's your thoughts on that as a US fan? Obviously, you want him to do well and you want him to progress. What's your thoughts?
So I have to put my own personal bias out front and center because I love Brendan Aronson. He's my favorite player on the U.S. men's national team for sure. Huge Aronson fan since he was with the Philadelphia Union. Stems back to before I got into SoRare, I was a big DraftKings soccer player. I played DraftKings all the time for Premier League, for the European leagues, and for MLS and Liga MX. And when Brendan Aronson had his debut match for Philly, he was like minimum salary price on DraftKings, and I put him in my lineup just because I need to fill a hole. He scored us a goal in his debut, and it's been a love affair with Brendan ever since for me. I also have extended that to his younger brother, Paxton Aronson, who plays for Philadelphia now. And my claim to fame is that I have the cheapest Paxton Aronson card on SoRare. I got his 4 of 100 rare last year for like 0.027 ETH. And like every card ever since then has always sold like way higher than that. So I'll never sell. It's one of my never sells for sure. Irrational never sells. But more pertinently, Brendan Aronson doesn't quite get as much love from the bulk of the fan base as he gets from me. But I do think he's super important. I love his dribbling. I love what he can bring. I think he makes players like Pulisic better. I think he can help us find a number 9 in terms of providing service and creating plays and whatnot. We do need that number 9. I'm looking at the call-up sheet and for the summer roster, and he's classified as a forward. I would say he's a winger for sure, but he can also just play as a midfield player, I think. I want to see Jesus Ferreira start to shine. I don't know that false 9 is really our go-to formation like Dallas uses him, but I do like him on the pitch as much as possible. And yeah, we need a striker. We thought it was Pepe. Pepe didn't pick up the gauntlet, so now we go search for the next one. The age-old U.S. men's national team problem, looking for a real number 9 for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you guys think the formation you will run sort of going up to the World Cup now, if you could sort of predict it, and like what kind of pieces you'd put in there personally if you were given a job right now?
I mean, at this point, it kind of has to be a 4-3-3, like with a false 9, because we don't have the number 9. The one thing I'll say, I do think DK is going to get there eventually. He's just got so many injuries that he's almost like Josie. Like if he's healthy, the U.S. national team is dangerous. But if he's not healthy, if he doesn't play at the World Cup, then that really takes away quite a bit. Because he just gives us something that nobody else really gives us. Aronson and Ariola are kind of in the same mold, and I think they both get hate for it. They're both wingers, but they're not creative. They're not, breaking guys down, taking guys one-on-one. But what they do is open up space so well, and they also press really well. They're also very good pressing forwards, which I think is a big deal when you're talking about a national team setup, that you can get the ball back and have the ball consistently. And those two guys do that better than anyone else in the pool. So yeah, I mean, obviously the number 9 is a big deal. Pepe could still get there. You never know. He's had half a season in Germany. So we'll have to just give him some time. I'm not a big Pepe fan myself, but he could get there. Siebatu is not bad either. He's a decent fill-in. He's not in this team, but I'm not sure why he's not in this team. Maybe he's hurt or something. But yeah, outside of that, it's probably Jesus Ferreira in a back 4. But I mean, the back 4 is pretty set, I'd say. The midfield 3 is definitely set. And with McKinney, Adams, and Musa. There's no way you can take any of those guys off the field. You got to get Pulisic in there. If he's healthy, you got to get Gio in there. So there's just not a lot of spots left, you know.
Where's Tim Weir fit in? Because I
got to get Way
I
in
bought
there
one
too.
of his
Yeah.
I bought one of his cards, and he ended the season really strong, and I'm kind of hoping that he either becomes a nailed-on starter for Lille. I'm sure he's hoping the same next year, or potentially gets a move somewhere, because it's very much in his interest and his development that he does start before running up to the World Cup, because he's a difference maker. He's physical and he's technical, and like you said about with Aronson and Areola, who are very smart players. They know how to move into spaces well, but they're not quite got that thing that maybe Pulisic has and Weir has too, where they can beat a man or two and do something out of blue. And like, you do need that when you get to the higher levels of football. So do you have any just quick thoughts on him next season, or just echo kind of the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, Way is another guy that you really have to find a place for. If he's healthy and he's on form, he's another guy that you gotta get in there. And I don't know how you fit Pulisic, Reyna, and Weah on the field at the same time, other than maybe making Gio the 10. And yeah, I don't know, because then you got to take off one of the three midfielders. So I'm not sure how that works. Even in the back three, who's going to play those wide positions that track back? I don't know. You know, one of those guys is going to come off the bench if everybody's healthy.
You would almost put Pulisic in the false nine at that point if it was like a Weah, Pulisic, Aronson, Weah, Pulisic, Areola front line or something like that. Maybe Pulisic would be in the middle of that three. It's tough to say. We got a lot of options and none of them are great. So it's about finding the right mix, in my opinion.
But they're much better than they used to be, though. They're not world class, but they're solid now.
When I say we got a bunch of options and they're not great, what I mean to say is that there's no clear standout three that like are obvious the guys. It's almost like the two that can best play around Pulisic and make him better are the two that should be in there, in my opinion.
And here's a crazy thought though. Pulisic, when he comes off the bench, is an absolute spark plug, even for Chelsea. Is that a thing? You know, do we dare go there? No,
you don't go there. He's too good. Pulisic,
not today, his injuries. No way.
Yeah, without his injuries, he's world class. Like, even for Chelsea, there was a spell where he's looking the best player on a pitch for a while. That's not in there.
But it's always when he's coming off the bench. And even with the US against Mexico, he comes off the bench and is phenomenal. Plays from the start and he's just like kind of So maybe his pace and his quickness is more effective in the second half, you know? I don't know.
I'm not with you on that one, mate.
I don't think that's realistically going to happen, but
whatever gets us to the final, I'm down with for sure.
All right, Trippin, let's get into it. This is what we've been building up for, and we want to get into Charlotte. That's your team. You're a proper fan. I've been there. I've been to a game with you. I've seen the passion, the ups and the downs. So what's your general thoughts on Charlotte, where they're heading? I mean, there's been some ups and downs. There's been some good and bad this year, as to be expected. But like, what's your general thought as a real fan there?
General thought is slight disappointment at this point, and I'd like to see a little bit more than what we've seen. We're a team that gets a lot of possession but struggles to score goals and really do stuff with the possession. We still have a losing record. We're right on the outside of the playoff picture. A couple teams behind us have game in hand, so we could slip further. Toronto and New England are probably going to try to climb up the standings. We're behind Cincinnati and Miami, two of the teams that I consider, two of the worst teams in the East. So general thought is slight disappointment. There's been some great highs. There's been some great moments. I've traveled all over supporting the team. You mentioned Orlando. I've been to DC. I've been to Atlanta. Had great experiences at all of them. I've been to Greenville, South Carolina for a U.S. Open Cup match. I've traveled to visit all kinds of places with Charlotte FC, and I probably will get at least one more road trip in before the season's done.
What do you think they're missing right now? Like, who would you add in if you had? Right, you got one DP to add in, or maybe a couple players around the league that you would snatch from somewhere else that you think would fit your system, and really like where you just falling short, because there are some signs of promise there.
So for a DP, the general thought is that we should add another attacking midfielder, which I tend to agree with because that's a best use of DP money, the way the MLS contracts and everything work. There's a link with us to a guy who plays for Newell's Old Boys in Argentina, Nicolas Castro. I just picked up his card recently, kind of hoping that he does end up in Charlotte. Also because it's kind of risk. If he doesn't end up there, he's still a good card, where he's at. So I think that is a good way to do it. Right now, our midfielders are all kind of the same guy, which is either a high, one of two. Let's say our midfielders fit into one of two templates, which is very, very locked into the coaching system of high possession and never advancing the ball forward unless you definitely have the numbers. So they're very conservative in terms of back passes and recycling things back to the keeper. Not great for so rare scoring because you really want those final third passes, from your guys getting up, not the way Charlotte plays it. Then the other template that we have is the key guy in that role, I would say, would be either Sergio Ruiz or Alan Franco, both guys who have been on the bench recently. The other template is the attacking youngster, which would be Ben Bender or Jordi Alcivar, two guys that are probably a little overpriced on Sorare right now just based on their potential, but they are trying to do good things in terms of making stuff happen. They just haven't been able to click so much. We're the second lowest team in terms of goals scored, just ahead of your Chicago Fire, Nashi, as I'm sure you are aware. So we need to score a lot more. Our Polish designated player, Karol Swiderski, is not getting great chances. His XG is really low, and he's not exceeding his XG, so it's a problem. So that center attacking mid to sort of link up all those problems and get the ball from that midfield possession into the attacking space. It's probably the way to do it. I will say, though, we also are in dire need of a left back. And I don't necessarily want to spend designated player money on a left back, but it's something we need to think about bringing in when the transfer window does open again in MLS. Because right now we're relying on Joseph Mora, kind of cast off from DC last year. And I've been calling him Jogging Joe. He's anytime we've given up a sort of a counterattacking goal, you see him jogging behind the play, and he's running full speed. It just looks like he's jogging, is what I should say. So it's just not good enough right now. He's pretty good defensively in sort of a slow down game. He was good against Carlos Gil. He's been good against some people, but against counterattacking sides, which we're facing a lot in this next stretch of our schedule, it's not going to be a good situation.
Yeah. I think like Swiderski from the game we watched, and I've watched a few on TV too. Swiderski is the real deal, and you really need to leverage him if you want to make some waves in the league, because he's quality. He's one of the best strikers in the league. I've seen him personally. He's busy, he's physical, he's fast, and he's got quality too. So you just need, like you said, but you can't do anything if you're not getting any service, any chance. Mm-hmm. So you need to find pieces just to get him to make be a difference maker. And I did really like me and Harry were actually talking in the game, and Jordi Alcivar.
Yeah.
He's a quality player. He looked very confident, composed on the ball in a game that, if you remember, you weren't doing too hot in the game in the first half, specifically the one we went to, but he was putting his foot on the ball and trying to make passes and trying to dictate the tempo a little bit. And I think he's got some potential. He's obviously a young player, probably makes some naive mistakes positionally and stuff. But I like you said, I think he's got some potential to do some stuff. Ben Bender, obviously, a lot of people know about. What's kind of his development been? Because obviously there's a lot of hype in him in the start, and now he's kind of not quite. I haven't heard from him in a couple of months, really.
He's exceeding expectations in terms of making the starting 11s. He's stayed in the manager's selections more than I thought he would, but he's not delivering SO5 scores on the pitch at all. He basically, for that first early stretch of the season, he was, I think, one of the top leaders in MLS in expected assists in XA or whatnot. He was really performing really well there, and that has trailed off kind of predictably as you would expect from a rookie trying to figure things out. And he's really just not delivering the results. If I can plug my non-Sorare related but Charlotte FC focused podcast, the Charlotte Soccer Show, which you kindly mentioned earlier, Chris, at For the Crown Baby on Twitter. That's our show sign-off phrase. But at For the Crown Baby, we on that show, the Charlotte Soccer Show, we have kind of tried to be like the voice of reason amongst the fan base of like, hey, don't get your expectations too high for Ben Bender. Like, He performed really well against Atlanta. He performed really well against New England, Cincinnati, and even then we were saying, hey, manage your expectations with this kid. Since then, he started to slump. And my guy, I got to shout out my guy, Orange Fly, who my Charlotte FC buddy. He collects Charlotte FC cards like I do on So Rare, but I will put my collection, my Charlotte FC So Rare collection is second to none. Trust me. You can go to my squad's page on Trip and B on the site.
Big statement, mate.
Yeah, hey, come at
We might need a
if anyone
poll.
has better, I'd like to see it for sure. But Orange Fly does have me with the 1 of 100 Ben Bender card, which I would love to have, but he threw a marker down and dropped like a 0.4 ETH bid on that 1 of 100 right when the 2022 cards came out. And there was nothing I couldn't even consider going over on that. And I do think he will eventually come good on that. Ben Bender has so much potential and good years ahead of him to not worry about it. But right now he needs a little more work. He's a project.
I think maybe we need a poll to see whose Charlotte squad is better, yours or Bob's. I think that would be a fun little poll to get going. And I love the For the Crown Baby. I love that sign off phrase. I wanted to
one more thing on Charlotte. I wanted to ask Griffin wise. He's like, they seem to have such a passionate fan base. Talk about yourself, Bob. People have taken to them so quickly, and you're like right in and amongst that. You're doing the podcast for the club. Why do you think that this franchise just coming in has stuck and drawn such a genuine and passionate fan base? Like, because that from coming from Europe, where it's so regional, it's so like integrated into history and generational like fan bases. Like, it's wild to me because how that's happened and how actually. Like, you're genuine, passionate fans and follow the club, but it's happened overnight almost like that. Like, why do you think that is? Just a curiosity.
I think it's because there's kind of an untapped soccer appetite here. There's and football appetite, because there's a lot of people that come from all over the world to live in Charlotte because it's a big business and commerce city. So not everyone, but many people that live here are not necessarily from here in terms of growing up. So they bring their love of outside things with them to Charlotte. So there's this big community of people that loved soccer just from all walks of life. And we've had USL teams for years and years and years. There's been a few over the years that rose and fell and rose and folded. But we had a really strong, we still have a team called the Charlotte Independents, which was in the USL last year and for the few years before that. And I went to those matches before Charlotte FC ever launched and had a lot of fun. And they have now since gone down. They relegated to USL 1, so they're kind of like third division now. But they borrow Charlotte FC players. Their goalkeeper is, one of our players. We loaned them and things like that, and the left back and whatnot. So there's just that previously untapped community that was able to just come together. People love things that are new. People love to represent. People have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder against Atlanta and Nashville, which are kind of the bigger southern cities. And Charlotte is the big city with the small town feel here in the South. And so some people want to see us sort of grow past that. Just if I'm speaking, I've only lived here about 10 years. So if I'm speaking like psychologically to the psyche of the city, you can see like I'm collecting like Charlotte scarves. I have a mini collection going here, 4 or 5 of them. This is my favorite one is the Queen here. And like, that's our first ever tifo. Like the opening match against LA Galaxy was a big tifo of a queen that was her head. And we set the MLS attendance record. We've led the league in attendance every home match ever since, even though we don't open the upper deck of our stadium, but similar to Atlanta. But Charlotte was just ready. It was just a market that was ready and got a little lucky because we were probably behind in the process in terms of Raleigh, I think, or another North Carolina city about 2 hours away, was probably a little ahead of us. St. Louis and Sacramento were ahead of Charlotte in the bidding process to get an expansion. But thankfully, we got a billionaire that bought the Carolina Panthers football NFL team, and he decided he wanted to have a soccer team also to sell tickets at the stadium when the Panthers weren't playing. And so he kind of used his billions to accelerate our bid past all those others, and we got into the league. It's been great. I've been all in ever since.
It's amazing how billions can accelerate things, right?
Yeah.
I love that, and I love the. I've always heard that North Carolina specifically would be a big soccer state. Even like North Carolina FC was big back in the day as well. And I think they're maybe still around. I think they were in the US Open Cup, but we played Charlotte Independence last year in Pittsburgh, and they had some of the better fans that traveled as well. So yeah, really, really interesting. I'm a big Clemson fan, which is a college here in the States, and their goalkeeper last year was George Marks, who you obviously have gotten to know a little bit more lately. And I watched him in the NCAA championships, and he stood on his head and was absolutely fantastic. Got them a national championship, and then was drafted in, I believe, the third round by Charlotte, which I thought was a steal. And I figured he would be, the fourth string goalkeeper coming into the season, being drafted that low. He has risen quickly, and he is now the backup. So what are your thoughts on Georgie?
Yeah, George Marks, awesome young talent. He quickly accelerated past Pablo Cisniega, who was Pablo played for LAFC at the start of last year and was the starting keeper, and then was picked up by Charlotte in the sort of preseason player acquisition period. And everyone was like, okay, Pablo Cisniega will have a chance to start for Charlotte. Then we went and got this guy, Christian Kalina, who was a little bit better and who was clearly the starter. But then everyone was like, okay, Pablo is a seasoned veteran backup. He'll be great. Then what just like you said, this kid, George Marks, comes in out of nowhere, blows everybody away in camp, gets himself signed to a new contract extension before the season even started, after the draft. And he's been the second string keeper every match. He was our cup goalkeeper. In fact, on the Charlotte Soccer Show, we usually pretty complimentary of the coach. We love our coach on the podcast, but we had to rip him and rail against him for not starting George Marks in this cup match loss that we had last week to New York Red Bulls. He went with a strong team and inserted Kalina, the starter, back in as keeper. But we liked the idea of having sort of like the cup keeper, like your cup matches, you have your cup keeper. It kind of, if you're looking for karma, not starting George Marks as our cup keeper might have set us off in a little bit of a bad spot against Red Bulls in that cup, because Marks is the real deal. He's very young. Let me double check his age, but I think he's 21.
Yeah, he's like 21 or 22.
He's going to have U23 eligibility for a while. And even though Christian Kalina is an awesome goalkeeper, and I hope he is the Charlotte number one for many years to come here, Marks is someone who is going to develop and could potentially get a starting job somewhere in the next year or so. If you've got some extra ETH laying around, he's trading at about 0.05 right now, 0.06. If you want to take a shot on a long-term U23 keeper, get him in your gallery, and he'll pay off next year for sure, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I loved picking him up. I literally had an alarm on my phone, so I didn't miss it, because this was like the fourth one that they've auctioned, and I've not been able to buy him off of open market yet. So I made sure I got in there and got him. And yeah, Kalina is fantastic. So we're not saying that Marks is going to take his job. Potentially, I mean, maybe down the line he could, but Kalina is very, very good. This is more of an, if Kalina gets hurt, Marks is going to be a very good keeper. He is not just a fill-in type guy. And then, who knows, 2 or 3 years from now, maybe he moves as a somebody picks him up that needs a keeper.
Keep an eye on Cisniega, because if there's teams out there, we talked about Toronto earlier with the Westbrook Bono not really working. There are some teams out there with some dicey keeper situations. Cisniega maybe gets a move in July, just because he was kind of brought in to fight for the number one. Now he's finding himself number 3. He is a serviceable keeper. I could see him potentially getting a move. We'll see.
Yeah, maybe that's something we talk about on a future podcast, is different twos around the league that could get a move, because there's a few guys now that are in that category. We have one more thing to do here, which is the Predictology. So we're just going to kind of go through and read what they had from the last couple of weeks, or I guess last week. So he had LAFC minus 1.5, which did not end up working out. Although LAFC did win, they did not win by 2 goals. And he said Abobasi was crazy and should have had a hat trick by the time it was 2-2. He said LAFC did win. The play on Sporting Kansas City did not come off either. 59%, 15 shots, but only 2 on target. Kansas City looked dead and flat on their legs. He says he thinks they'll improve, but it wasn't this week. And then he so kindly says, although I was very much right on my New York Red Bulls tips, sorry. with a 4-1 win against a taxiless DC. So at least he apologized for picking New York. And we've kind of been through that. So next week, obviously, international break. There is a game actually, Vancouver against RSL. He doesn't really like anything in this, but he said he guesses he would pick a draw in this game. Vancouver are kind of rising a little bit, and they're a little bit better they're a lot better at home, 37% better when they play at home. But RSL is a good team, so yeah, I'm in the same kind of boat. I don't really have a good read on that game. RSL has really been playing well lately. What do you guys think about this RSL Vancouver game next week?
Yeah, I mean, I watched actually a bit of the. I don't know, Trippin did too, and RSL looked brilliant yesterday. They absolutely dominated the game, and that was without Jefferson Savarino starting the game. When he came on, he made an impact. Did you see the same thing there, Trippin? You're nodding along.
Yep, he almost scored one that was offside, but he was making an impact, had a chance created. I think he racked up 11 AA points on So Rare in about 20 minutes. So someone I've invested in recently, so I love to see that, and I would anticipate him getting in on the starting lineup over probably Michael Chang. Now goes to the bench behind Savarino, although Chang did have an assist yesterday, as RSL really did look great, and I would have to have them as favorites over the Whitecaps even on the road. Here's a question I would wonder is David Ochoa ever going to play for RSL again, or is it math all the way at this point, because he's delivered the results?
That's a tough one. I mean, Ochoa's had a really weird kind of 6 months, hasn't he, too? Because he was on the bench for Mexico during an RSL game, which was also kind of wild
for an exhibition for the Mexican national team.
I don't really understand what's going on with Ochoa, and I mean, hopefully everything's okay with him in his personal life, and there's nothing going on there. But yeah, that's a weird one for sure. I mean, he's talented, no doubt. So at some point, somebody's going to give him a chance. But
I'm with Trippin. I think RSL are going to get the win. They got a lot of what I like about them is got some diversity going forward. Meaning they got like Cordova up front, who's like physical target man, and then Bobby Wood. He's really he's not the most technical player, but he's really busy, really dynamic, like getting in and around into spaces. And now if they have Ruiz playing from deep, very technical, serving in nice crosses. Moram's good delivery too. And now if they can add Savarino to that, they've got a lot of ways that they can hurt teams, both in behind, playing long from deep, balls from deep, and Savarino too can do a bit on his own. So I think they're going to be one to watch, to be honest.
Don't sleep on Vancouver, though. I got to plug a little bit on Vancouver. They're coming. It was a very, very bad start to the season, but it seems like they're finally starting to get things figured out a little bit. And they've got so much talent. Like Caicedo is so good. Dahome is so good. Cavallini, who has been really much better this year, has gotten back into the rotation. Brian White, who was fantastic last year, now can't get on the field. They've got a lot of good pieces going forward. They just aren't great in the midfield, but Sebastian Berhalter is even kind of starting to develop as a decent player, and playing in Vancouver is so hard, man. Last year, if you look at their splits, when they were playing quote unquote home games at RSL, they were not very good. They go back to Vancouver and they went on an absolute tear to make the playoffs. So yeah, it's an interesting game. I mean, RSL has done much better than I thought they would. RSL, I picked them along with San Jose and Inter Miami as my worst teams in the league, and that really hasn't panned out. They're third in the West, so good for them. They're really getting the most out of their talent for sure. But that was the next week's games presented by Predictology. Everything will be linked in the show notes if you want to get any further analytics from Predictology. So that's pretty much it. Do you guys have any last minute thoughts here to wrap things up?
There's a couple of questions out there for Trippin on the Twitter sphere, weren't there?
Yeah, let's rapid fire some questions real quick.
That's a good one.
I'll try not to drone on tangents.
Let's see. Okay, so our good friend Orangefly Bob has asked, what are your expectations for Vinicius Melo? And will you be going after his super rare auction?
Melo is going to come in and be a squad player. He's not someone who's going to push Swiderski out of the starting role for a starting striker. he's not really a winger type of player, better than the wingers we've already got going. So I think he's squad depth, someone who can be a little more dynamic than Daniel Rios as far as relieving Swiderski. And as far as the super rare, I might have to go for it. I mean, we're about 2 days away as we tape this. We're 2 days away from the close of the auction. I'm a little ETH poor after I've just made some big investments recently, but I did splurge on a lot of good Charlotte players. I have every Charlotte card limited, the 2022 and 2021 versions. I have most of the rares, not all. I'm starting to pick up super rares as well. I could use this Melo card, but my top price for it is pretty low. We'll see. Someone could outbid me on this easy. We'll let you know in about 36 to 40 hours on that one.
It's probably going to be Bob that outbids you.
He does complete my. I have a few other guys that have that cross tattoo on the front of their neck, though, like Vinny Mello does. So
there you go.
I might have to get it just for that reason alone.
So we have one from Siege of the Day 23 who wants to know when the Liga MX podcast is returning. They want to know your proudest ever moment in fantasy sports, and how high up does being banned from the Discord rank. And then they want to know, are people that don't collect for one club on Sower actually the weird people?
Yeah, the Liga MX podcast is a pod that I did for DraftKings back in my DraftKings days, just because there were pods for like EPL and MLS, but there was none for Liga MX. So I started one with a buddy. We did about 20 episodes and then lost interest, but it was fun. It's not coming back. Sorry, Siege. As for collecting Charlotte cards and people that collect only one club, I'm probably the anomaly there. I think people should collect their favorite clubs. I'm banking on So Rare still being here in 5 to 7 years, and some of these early old school cards starting to pick up some collectability value. So we'll see. For me, it's just a way that I have fun with the site, is to collect Charlotte cards, many of which are useless in SO5. But it was kind of good timing, because the onset of specialist and underdog leagues actually gives a little bit more utility to some of these deeper Charlotte cards that I have in my deck now. So that I just play them in that, and I have a lot of fun. And if they ever win me prizes, I'm going to be very, very happy. And what was his second question that Siege asked?
What was your proudest moment ever in the fantasy sports space, and how high up does being banned from the Discord rank?
Proudest fantasy moment probably goes to, let's make it So Rare related, and it would be winning Julian Alvarez as my first ever award. Just, when I joined So Rare in February 21, and I grinded. I never won any rewards until this weekend, Memorial Day 21. May of 21 was my first ever award, and I won. I had a Philadelphia Union stack with a few other guys, and Castro scored, Jack Elliott scored, and I won Julian Alvarez. I created a little avatar, like a little alienized version of Julian Alvarez NFT, and like, I love the guy. I should easily be selling him, because he's going to Man City and his playing time is going to be very tough to predict, and he's just trading at like 1 ETH. I should sell him and reinvest that 1 ETH, strategically, in guys that can help me, but I'll never sell him. So he's the mascot of my club. Let's go, Julian, all the way.
There you go. Love it. We're going to close with a question from a legend, with Quinny, who asked a question. And I'm going to try as hard as I can to do this in one try, but here we go. If Ben Bender was a bender, how many Ben Benders could Ben Bender bend if Ben Bender had to bend some Ben Benders?
69.
That's a great answer. That's right. Verified. We've actually seen him bend that many benders. Yeah, awesome work. Thanks so much for being on the podcast. We appreciate the time and had a really great conversation here. Thanks for coming on.
It's my honor. You guys are awesome. Keep doing what you do, and love that So Rare gets some focus on the stateside. We're a small percentage of the user base, but we're growing every day.
Go.
We're definitely getting there. We'll be there eventually. Eventually we'll get there. Well, have a good week, guys. Thanks for listening.